The Bengals lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's just about it for their competitiveness in the 2024 season.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We are Locked On Bengals on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We're on YouTube or everywhere you get your podcast. So shout out to the everydayers who came back for another episode. Shout out to all of you who make us your first listen. And if you are new to the show and you want to hear us talk about firing coaches the rest of the season and talk about who the Bengals can draft, well, that plus evaluation mode is what we're watching the rest of the way, and you're in the right place. We will have plenty to talk about for the rest of the year here on Locked On Bengals. So you can subscribe wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time, where you can save $20 on your first purchase of tickets in the app using promo code Locked On NFL. And James, with another loss where the offense scored 30 plus points, the team scored 38 points. The Bengals dropped to 2-4 on the season when scoring more than 30. And it's curtains, essentially. And it goes back to the same things that we've watched from this team all year. A defense that is unfathomably, and I'm out of words to describe just how disappointing they are.
Oh, yeah, I think you come out and you have the pick six, and you're like, oh, well, you're ahead of the game there, and it's like, all right, well, force a punt or two, and you're feeling pretty darn good about that first half. And what's crazy, Jake, is they had the pick six. Joe Burrow completed 80% of his first half passes. Chase Brown was averaging 7.6 yards per attempt, had a touchdown, had a long run of 40 yards. Burrow had a touchdown pass. Like, all of these good things happened, and they were trailing at halftime. And it's just like, what in the world is going on? And it's because after that pick six, the Bengals gave up 3 straight touchdowns. 3 straight, back to back to back. It just can't happen. And yet it did happen, and yet it has happened. How many times this year have we said, oh, well, the defense gave up back-to-back-to-back touchdowns or 6 straight scoring drives, which is what it ended up being for the Steelers. And really the only one in there that felt all right was the blocked field goal, right? And so this defense, I don't really know where to be positive. Like, you insert Jordan Battle, didn't really notice Jordan Battle much different than any other time. Still noticed Geno Stone taking so many bad angles. That guy failed geometry class, clearly. And by the way, I wasn't good at geometry either, but I'm not the one taking bad angles on the field, so I can make that joke. And so, yeah, the play that's wild to me, so you take that 7-0 lead, you have some momentum. How does George Pickens just walk into the end zone from 17 yards out on a screen pass? He didn't do anything special on that screen. It's just a bad angle by Geno Stone, poor tackling, and suddenly he's into the end zone.
And really poor contain from Cam Taylor-Britt. Geno Stone's actually the guy that's supposed to be where the play is redirected to. Like, he's the inside guy there. Cam Taylor-Britt's on the edge trying to set an edge, and he doesn't. They both end up in the same place. And so I don't necessarily think that that's like purely a Geno Stone problem. There's obviously poor tackling there, and Geno Stone is at the play, doesn't make the play. But it's another instance where you have 2 guys in the same spot. It's assignment soundness. It's the same thing we've seen from this defense all year. And you're talking about trying to find positives on the defense. There just aren't any in this game. The one positive play that you could talk about is a special teams play where Joseph Ossai, as you mentioned, gets through for blocking a field goal, which gives the Bengals their last glimmer of hope, realistically, in the game, outside of a miracle needing an onside kick to have a chance to go win the game at the end, where they obviously don't make the onside kick because that's a 1% proposition at this point in the NFL, which is pretty close to the Bengals playoff odds after losing this game. But it's part of a series of events for this defense where it's the same stuff we talked about all year, except it's all in one game, right? Like, you have guys covering grass and assignment soundness issues in the secondary. You have the entire lack of a pass rush again. You have poor tackling. You have guys in the same gaps You have the various play calling issues where Lou can't find the right lever to pull at the right time. They're sending blitzes that Russ sees and diagnoses so quickly. I mean, he cut them up. It was Mike White Jets like at times, especially early in the game, and then later in the game, Russ is doing whatever he wants, essentially. And so this game is a microcosm of the entire season on defense in a lot of ways when you look at all the things that went wrong. And there's really no positive. Like in other games, at least we've been able to say, but Trey had a good game. But BJ Hill was pretty good. There's really none of that in this game to speak of, where despite getting a pick six to start the game, they give up 44 points to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the fourth time in team history, James, that the Bengals have given up 26 or more points to the Pittsburgh Steelers in a half of football. They've played the Steelers a ton of times in their history. Just the fourth time that's happened. It's the first time it's happened in Cincinnati. The other three were in Pittsburgh. Just an example of this defense being historically inept. And if not for that 2018 Terrell Austin year, we'd have to go back quite a ways to find a defense that was close to as bad as this one is playing, especially at this point in the season with their season on the line.
Yeah, I think they don't, obviously they lack talent, but when you talk about all of their shortcomings, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about all their flaws, they also just don't have any leaders. They're like, who do you think is like, hey, we need to tackle better, play better, take better angles? Like, what guy in there is playing well enough and is also the leader that can do that? Was DJ Reader not there? Logan Wilson isn't a leader. I'll say that. So it's not like, oh, well, we didn't have him on the field. So no, not a leader. And by the way, not every guy's a leader. Trey Hendrickson's not a leader. He's not going to lead you. Mike Hilton, I think, is a good leader. He's not at the level of a play-wise where you can bank on him being that guy. And so in the past, I would say it would be DJ Reader, because he was just a monster. And also had that vocal stuff that you need to be that kind of guy too. And so it's, to me, it's both. Look, it's a dumpster fire right now. I mean, you got 520 yards. You give up 520 yards to the Steelers. Russell Wilson throws for 400 plus yards for just the third time in his career. He hasn't done that. This isn't Joe Burrow throwing for 400. Joe Burrow wakes up with 400 yards passing. Like, this is the Steelers. And it wasn't just the moon balls. I know you were worried about Russ and the moon balls. It wasn't just that. It was everything. And you know what? The thing that irks me the most, and it isn't really Jermaine Pratt, but this is the example of the lack of leadership. After the game, and I posted this video. It's tweeted now by the time you guys have seen this, but he kept bringing up quick game. Oh, they're just running quick game. Quick game. Oh, they're running quick game. Well, they ran quick game for 500 plus yards on offense, and you couldn't stop it. And you forced one punt. You can't dismiss it as quick game when you can't get off the field. It isn't just quick game. And I do think that was – he said a little bit more than that, but not really. I mean, it wasn't like he said that the Steelers were giving them fits and that they need to do this or that. It was pretty dismissive of, oh, yeah, it's quick game. Well, that quick game whooped your tail.
That's why I talk about the Mike White example. That's how it felt for a lot of the early part of this game, where they're just off in zone and then they can't tackle. And so you get checkdowns to Darnell Washington or Najee Harris, and then they run for like 8 to 20 yards because nobody – like the amount of tackles that happened at the point of contact, the initial point of contact in this game for the Bengals, the percentages, is just far too low. But it's like we've seen from them all year. It's the same stuff we've seen from them all year. And on the other side of the ball, it's largely the same stuff we've seen from them all year too, where Joe Burrow was awesome again. Jamar Chase produced. T. Higgins produced. Chase Brown produced. The offense scored 31 points against the defense, has given up 17 points per game going into this game this year. They just did that to the Chargers defense. It was the best scoring defense in the NFL too. So it's the same frustration, the same stories we're talking about And that's just who the team is. There's also just like the crazy stats to keep accumulating. A lot more to talk about in this one, James, as we continue wrapping up effectively the Bengals season, but specifically this game against the Steelers coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by IceShaker.com. Look, Bengals fans, I know today was tough, but if you're like me, the holiday shopping list is quite long. There are plenty of Bengals fans in your life. And if that's the case, well, you got to get an IceShaker. IceShaker is now officially licensed with the NFL, NHL, NBA, NCAA, Major League Baseball, and it's going to make the ideal gift. I have a Bengals IceShaker at home, and you're going to love it. Created and used by the Gronkowski brothers, IceShakers has sold more than 1 million bottles for a reason. You're talking about kitchen-grade stainless steel bottles that won't absorb odor like plastic bottles do, and they're going to keep your drinks cold. The agitator also works as a strainer and makes it very solid, a very solid tailgating cup as well. If you want to use it as a mixer to mix drinks, all you have to do is go to IceShaker.com and use code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout to get 25% off right now. Again, it's IceShaker.com. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get 25% off your order. Order your branded bottles today at IceShaker.com and use code LOCKEDONNFL for 25% off your order. IceShaker, show your support for your teams with the best branded workout bottles on the market.
The show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We're coming up on the holiday season. I love seeing all the beautiful Christmas lights going around during this time of year. You can think about the things that make you feel happy and cozy at home in December. Whatever that is, whether it's wrapping up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate or braving the cold, if that's how it is where you live, to check out those lights. Whatever the priorities need to be, therapy is a great way to bring yourself some of that comfort that will never go away, even when the season changes. And if you're thinking of trying therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, suited to your schedule, and so flexible. And to get started, you just need to fill out a brief questionnaire. You'll get matched with a therapist, and you can switch at any time for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. You'll save 10% on your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
All right, Jake, let's continue with the defense. If there's no positives, and there aren't, right? No Logan Wilson, no Sheldon Rankins. I don't think Jordan Battle did anything that was awesome. Akeem Davis-Gaither and Jermaine Pratt led the team with 13 tackles apiece. Wasn't overly impressed with either guy. Where do they go from here? What buttons do you want to see pushed as we record this in 8 days when they take the field for Monday Night Football against Dallas? And obviously we can elaborate on that, but I just mean, like, is there anything you think Luke can do with these guys that is going to maybe turn it a little bit?
I don't think there's much of an answer. Like, I don't need to see Sam Hubbard playing the amount of snaps he's playing anymore, just because what's the point at this point? Like, he's playing through an injury. He clearly doesn't have whatever explosion he was coming into the season with that injury is clearly affecting him. Not that the other guys are better, but at least Myles Murphy is a part of your future, right? And one of the things that we talked about is getting into evaluation mode if this game got away from them. The game got away from them. So at this point, you go into evaluation mode. And the pieces to evaluate on defense are, like, if you're talking about, well, okay, let's just start with the players that matter the most. That's the defensive front. That's Myles Murphy, Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson. We can probably pretty well assume that Joseph Osai is on his way out as a free agent, so probably not that one. But he's still going to play because all these guys need to play enough to get through the rest of the season. But it's those three guys on the defensive line is where you start. It's a real shame that they lost Dax Hill and DJ Turner, because those would be two other guys that you'd love to have had the opportunity to see finish the season, to get that development in, because development is a big problem with the defense as well. And then you get to some of the minor pieces, or maybe they're still major. Like, you probably don't need to see Von Bell out there anymore. I think we've talked a lot about the idea of just trying someone else at both safety spots at this point. So with very little left to play for, it could help your team be a better team. Why not try it? the last one, and this is way down on the priority list, they need to stop doing the 5-2 defense thing, the 5 defensive lineman fronts. They went away from it in the second half or the second straight week. Against the Chargers, they started in it. Against the Steelers, they started in it. Against both teams, they went to 3 linebackers in the second half. Obviously, that's much worse when your linebacker off the bench is Joe Bacci and not Akeem Davis-Gaither, who you mentioned earlier. He had a terrible game, multiple penalties, and couldn't find the ball in the air on one of them that could have been an interception on a ball that hit his back. Difficult play for him to make in that instance, but multiple missed tackles as well. I was excited to see him in this game and disappointed with what they got. But if you're going to go to that third linebacker, why not get Muma Jongmeta some run? Like, we don't need to see Joe Bacci at this point, right? Like, those would be the things. And again, way down on the priority list. But I'm more thinking about, can they avoid the dead cat bounce issue that they've had with this team, where they see them get results late in the season and then hold on to coaches? Like, you have to remember what got you to 4-8. You can't forget the issues that have plagued this defense all year, the development problems that you have, not being on the same page with your front office. And the front office is also to blame for this to some degree. And there's more time to talk about this. But that's one of the things that I'm worried about, is like, you can't extend any leash. So is there upside to moving on in season from a defensive coordinator? A lot of Bengals fans would argue yes. I don't know if we're going to get into that conversation today. The merit to it, to me, James, is that then you don't have the issue late in the season where they're like, oh, but they finished so strong in those last 3 games, so let's keep them. And that's where you've seen this ownership group keep coaches a little bit too long so many times in their history.
Yeah, I think that's my question now is, all right, how does this team in general respond? Like, today they were playing for their football lives this season. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they responded with the amount of nastiness that I wanted. Remember the nastiness part that I talked?
They did that on the first defensive play. They got that penalty, but it was a really good hit. And then
by the way, fine with it. I was fine with it. I get it. He could have been, but finally we see something. And then it just, what was that when George Pickens is trotting down for 17 yards? Like, those are the things that annoy me the most. Like, that can't happen. And yet they do happen, and it happens all the time. And then you have the coverage breakdowns where Calvin Austin is he's pretending he's going up against the University of Cincinnati, that he's back in Memphis and just running free for a touchdown where no one's near him. I think the thing I want to see, and Joe Burrow mentioned this, is in especially, I'm glad that he's aware of this, but it's something we're going to talk about more this week for sure. We will refer, and we're paying attention to how Joe and Jamar and the guys that are going to be here, who knows how many more that is. There are others, but who knows how many more that is.
Yeah, it's like Chase Brown, Orlando Brown. Anyway.
So the Brown twins. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
End of list.
Yeah. Amari is. Anyways, there are guys, but it doesn't feel great. And so how you respond to this, it is something we're paying attention to. And I do think how these players and coaches respond to this, I do think it matters. Now, that doesn't mean that if you beat a Dallas team that doesn't have Dak Prescott, or you go beat a lifeless Tennessee team, or you beat a Denver team or a Browns team at home, that we should really change anything here. The bottom line is this team has underachieved to the most extreme degree I could have ever imagined this season. Mm-hmm. They have, because they're 4-8 and Joe Burrow's playing great, and Jamar Chase is awesome, and T. Higgins, when he's been healthy, and he's been healthy a decent amount, not all the time, but a decent amount, has been awesome. And Trey Hendrickson's been good, and they stink. This team stinks. They're a bad football team. Doesn't mean they don't have good parts to them, but they're a bad football team. They're 1-7 in one-score games. They're 0-4 in games where they've scored not 0-4, but they've scored 33 points or more in 4 losses.
Yeah,
that's insane. They're like 33 points or more. They've lost 4 games scoring 33 or more. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. They're the 4th team in NFL history to do that. So coaches.
Yeah, sorry, I was saying 2-4. They've won 2 of those games. Raiders, Panthers. They lost 4, so 2-4 in those games. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so how do you get to 2-4 when you scored 33 plus? Remember when my magic number was 30? The everydayers do. It doesn't make sense. And
well, remember
so
when it turned into 40 this year?
Yeah. But part of that is on coaching. And so I want there to be pressure. Everyone in the building right now, and I'm in the building that I'm talking about saying this, should be feeling pressure right now. That pressure should be felt. And we can elaborate more on that this week. But that's a must, because there's no way they should be 4-8, and yet they are 4-8. And so that's something that we're going to discuss, and we can put a bow on this Bengals-Steelers game as the Bengals fall to the Steelers. Another one-score loss. We'll put a bow on it coming up next.
This episode of Locked On Bengals is sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Maybe you're done thinking about games this NFL season as a Bengals fan, but you still want to look ahead to the draft at this time of year. Well, FanDuel still has something for you if you're ready to look ahead to the draft with some of their early draft odds available. The #1 overall pick currently favored to be Shedeur Sanders from Colorado, followed by his teammate Travis Hunter. Whether it's that or anything else, you'll get $150 in bonus bets with FanDuel when you win your first $5 bet. And it's a great place for live betting as well, since you can see stats and play-by-play in the same place you place your bets. You can check it out today at FanDuel.com to get started. And if you win that first $5 bet, like I said, you'll get $150 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Maybe you're going to see the Bengals play the Cowboys. Well, today's show is also brought to you by Game Time, and Game Time is going to make it easy. And maybe it's not that game. Maybe you're thinking, hey, you know what? I want to go to Pittsburgh and watch the Bengals play Pittsburgh in what is most likely the season finale as Jake makes a face. Well, you can do that with Game Time. It's going to make it really easy. And that's the point and the awesome part about Game Time is it's not just NFL games, it's NBA games. Maybe you're thinking about going to a concert, one of your favorite artists, and it's in another city. Game Time is going to make it so easy, so simple to get tickets to your favorite live events. They have all-in pricing. They have panoramic seat views that show you exactly what it's going to look like when you sit down in that arena, in that stadium to watch your favorite event. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
A lot of tired narratives and things that we've heard and said all year present again in this game. Joe Burrow finishes 28 of 38 for 309 and 3 touchdowns, plays a game where he's evading pressure, jump passing touchdowns while he's getting hit, and the Bengals lose. They score all the points and they lose. The stats are just crazy at this point. And Joe Burrow continuing to play well in losses is just crazy at this point. But the couple of stats that really stood out to me, James, these like historical trends or things that have happened this season, Ben Albright with one of them. The Bengals have more losses when scoring 30 plus points this year. And it's really 33 plus points, which I wonder how that would look. But 30 plus points this year is they've lost 4 of those games, right? We've talked about that. The rest of the league combined this season when scoring 30 or more points has only lost 3 times. The Bengals have lost more games than the rest of the league combined this season than 31 other teams when scoring 30 plus points. That's the first one. I'll let you react to that before I get to the next one.
Yeah. So that's a couple of things. Part of that is coaching. You can't.
Huge part of that is coaching. Massive part.
Well, because everyone's going to say just defense. Like, oh, it's just the. I think that's coaching in general. I think there's in-game decisions, obviously the defensive coaching staff, but in-game decisions, how you're managing things, like it has to be. To screw it up that bad with that many points, there's a reason my marker, my goal every week was 30. Because you get to 30 and usually you feel really darn good about your chances. So, yeah, that doesn't surprise me because we've watched it. But it's also shocking to hear at the same time, if that makes sense.
When you put it in juxtaposition to literally 31 other teams, it's crazy. The other one that got me here is from Doug Clausen. the Bengals tied for the most or have the most losses in these situations in NFL history now. One, they today set a record for the most losses in a season when scoring 33 plus points, which maybe you say that's an arbitrary number. Maybe you say 33 plus. Why are you picking 33 plus? Okay, well, let's go to 25 plus points. The Bengals have 6 losses with 25 plus points this year. That's tied for the most with any other team in NFL history. The Bengals have 3 losses with 34 plus points this year, which is tied for the most with any team ever, and 2 losses with 38 plus points this year, which is tied for the most with any team ever. This team is doing unfathomable things to lose games in bizarre ways when their offense, and in this case they had a pick 6, but their offense largely is putting up points.
Yeah, that is crazy. And the 2 38-point losses, by the way, in division, in your stadium.
And
41-38 for the Ravens week 5, 44-38 today.
Mm-hmm.
Just brutal. I mean, those are 2, take those out and flip them. Say the Bengals win those. We're having an entirely different, it feels much, much different at 6-6, 3 wins in the division. Everything is in front of you. All of the things Zac Taylor says that are cliche would still be true. Now, not so much.
I'm still probably ready to fire the defensive staff unless the defense is, making the plays in those clutch moments that, like, I know we don't want to talk about it too much today, but I'm ready to make the move now, like today, tomorrow, like whenever it is, because I don't have confidence they're going to do it at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think there's multiple. I don't anticipate that, by the way, happening. If it does,
no, I don't either.
But I do think there's some nuance to it. It obviously, and so that's probably where we'll go on our next show for sure.
Yeah. The last set of numbers here I've got for you. I don't know if we want to reflect on the offense more in this game. I mean, Chase Brown was good in this game too. They had success in the running game early, all those things. But the Bengals, remember the 1-score game narrative with Zac Taylor that went away for a while because the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. They went to the AFC Championship game. Go ahead.
It went away in 21 and 22.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's it.
Last year just kind of got a mulligan, just because of Joe.
But they still got that dead
it was a big thing.
Year.
Yeah,
and
it was a big
thing.
Go ahead.
This year they're 1-7 in 1-score games.
Yeah,
they averaged 28.25 points in those 1-score games. They've scored 30. We talked about these. They scored 33 or more in 4 of them. 3 of those in division now, and lost all 4 1-score games where they scored 33 or more points. So not only are they scoring all these points and losing, but they're scoring all these points and losing in 1-score games. It's just, and today didn't need to be a 1-score game. Like, you can call it a garbage time touchdown or whatever, but they had an onside kick or like a few seconds on the clock away from having a chance at the end.
By the way, I actually should have brought this up probably 20 minutes ago. It's 3rd down. You're down 6. Justin Fields just went in. Russell Wilson just had his 3rd 400-plus yard passing game of his life, or of his NFL career. Not of his life, of his NFL career. They took him out. You think that they're throwing it with Justin Fields? How is no one on him? It was unbelievable. And by the way, if you're going to be that undisciplined, then accept the holding penalty and make it 2nd and long.
Yeah.
But
many issues.
But fine. But on 3rd down, your guys better be ready to go and make the play when Justin Fields is on the field.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be one thing if it was a missed tackle and someone was in position. How is no one there? I don't care if it was on Josh. I don't care. The coach that's on coaching, you got to be more disciplined. That sums up this year how they lose critical moments where you can literally pull victory from defeat. You get a stop there. You get the ball back. You're giving it to Joe with over 90 seconds. I like my chances. I like my chances there always. Might not always work, but I like it always. You're at home. He's rolling. And you can't get a tackle. Like, think about that. Like, as far out of it as it felt like they were. Just make that stupid little silly play that disciplined teams do. And that is your argument, by the way. And I think anyone's argument. You want to talk about the coaching staff, anyone on it, certainly on defense, a play like that shows it. That is the insane to me that they weren't in position to make that play.
Yeah, and that's talking about just a single play out of a game. There are many
One
examples of this throughout the season. You could talk about all the like I've talked about the Mike White stuff early in the game when everything they were trying to do defensively was just getting picked apart by the Steelers, blitzing into screens, giving up checkdowns to Najee Harris over the middle of the field that turned into chunk plays, just like we saw against the Mike White Jets that year. And it's just that's just a game. Go through the season, lots of examples. And that's not even talking about the development issues or not being on the same page as a front office on certain players that we've seen from them over the last few years as well. They obviously haven't retained a couple of players there. They've spent 9 draft picks out of their last 10 in the first 3 rounds on defensive players. I guess before Jermaine Burton this year. I mean, there's like nothing to show for it. There's a development problem too. And that's not even, you can point to these good reasons without even getting to development is why I bring that up. The bottom line is, to me, James, major changes needed. For those watching on YouTube, you see this on the background. Major changes are needed for this team to be a serious football team. And
For sure.
You have to hope, that's all you can do, that they find a way to make those changes. We'll talk about some of those changes, what they could be, what they should be, as we go through this season, as we shift into evaluation mode, as we talk about what this Bengals team can accomplish or try to figure out over their last few games of the season. James, got something to add?
Emmanuel Forbes, claim him. He can join your group of guys who can't tackle.
Why not
Claim
at this point?
No, claim him. He's got good ball skills. Maybe he can make a play or two. Never know.
He did at one point. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening and have a good one.